Welcome back to GE Tonight. We apologize for the technical difficulties there, but we are your nightly show for all of the latest updates this GE 2025. I'm Audrey Seek, and it's great to be here with you as we walk you through the ins and outs of this campaign season. We're in day 6 of the campaign season now, just 4 more days until cooling day, and we have 5 days before we head to the polls this Saturday. So what's unfolding right now? We see 5 election rallies just getting started in the heartlands at this hour. And there was the iconic Fullerton rally earlier during the lunchtime hours today. And the focus of tonight's show, we're looking beyond our borders, geopolitical issues, and to understand how Singapore's general election fits into the bigger global picture. So this year, we saw lots of global tensions, rising protectionism, and the risk of economic downturn, all threatening to reshape the global landscape. So what could this all mean for Singapore's role in this new world, and how will this impact this election and how we vote? We have 2 guests today to walk us through all of these implications. First up, we welcome Chong Ja Ian, Assistant Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore. Ian, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. How are you?
Good. It's associate professor, actually.
Oh, associate professor. I'm
no
sorry.
problem.
And we also have Nicholas Fang, who is the Director for Security and Global Affairs at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs and a former NMP. Nicholas, long time no see. How are you?
Long time no see. It's been at least 2 days. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having us back.
It's great to have you guys here. Okay, lots to go through today, right? I want to start with what unfolded at the PAP Fullerton rally earlier today. We heard from some heavy hitters, including, of course, PM Lawrence Wong, and they addressed key issues like cost of living, GST, but also about the quote-unquote changing world. So let's hear what Lawrence Wong had to say.
The world has changed. Storm clouds are here. And you can feel it right here in the heart of our city. Businesses are pulling back. Every day you read the newspapers, you get more and more worried because the rules keep on changing. This storm will test us. And if we are not careful, we could lose everything that we have worked so hard to build here in Singapore. Yet throughout this campaign, have you heard any opposition party talk seriously about the challenges we face? Not a single one. Because to them, this is the PAP's burden to carry.
All right, so that was PM Wong this afternoon addressing geopolitical concerns. So, gentlemen, do you think these international risks that he's talking about are something the average Singaporean will take into consideration when they head to the polls this Saturday? Or is it more of the average day-to-day worries that are more top of mind? I'll start with you, Ian.
Sure. I think the two are related, although the real force of the global uncertainties haven't really hit yet. So I think people don't really see that as much. But what will happen is that as trade barriers go up, inflation will also go up. As trade declines, businesses will pull back. There'll be less investment, and these things will be felt. So that's certainly true. Although I think it's also important to note that it's not all just sort of gloom and doom. Yes, that things are serious, but I think what's also important is to have a clear plan ahead, and that I'm really waiting for all the parties to put something forward.
All right. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I agree with Ian. I think a lot of the uncertainty is yet to play out. The one thing that is sure is that Trump's unpredictable nature means that there's a lot of unknowns that are likely to loom. Is he going to go ahead? Is he going to pull back? Is he going to cut deals? Is he going to try to do something crazy? And that speaks a lot to the nature of politics in the US. And to a certain extent, it raises then the question for what do we as Singapore as voters potentially want to look for. I think the conventional wisdom is that all elections inevitably become very local in nature. The fact that some parties, the PAP of course, and some of the other parties are actually referencing the global instability speaks to our demographic in Singapore as well. We have a lot of young people. We are a very open economy, and to a certain extent we have a lot of information flowing from all parts of the world.
Yeah.
So people are aware of some of these challenges. They are aware of what's happening in the US and China and Europe. And I think ignoring the global situation is something a little bit dangerous. To have some of the parties come out and completely downplay the tariffs, for example, and say that, well, Singapore, we don't trade that much, we don't export that much to the US anyway, so it's not really a problem. I think it's a very myopic and slightly limited worldview, which I think a lot of, especially young voters, are far more sophisticated in their understanding as well. So it's good to hear some of these things being talked about. Exactly to Ian's point, what are some of the plans? I presume some of the plans are being hedged because everybody, including us here, not really sure how things are going to play out.
Yeah.
But it would be good to hear some of the vision and some of the direction of where parties want to go. I don't know if they'll be able to squeeze it in the next 5 days, but we'll see.
Yeah, so we want to talk about these uncertainties. Of course, we bring up the issue of tariffs, a 10% baseline tariff on Singapore goods. And of course, the larger concern for us in the region is the US-China trade war that is bubbling as we speak. And the PAP, as we know, has reacted quite swiftly to all of this, right? And warned of rough waters ahead. Here's a snippet of DPM Gan Kim Yong at a rally over the weekend addressing this.
Some have said that the PAP's reaction to this US tariff announcement is overblown, that we are sending a message of fear and there is no need to worry because Singapore has weathered bigger storms before. But really? Are you sure? This is not just another storm. This is no ordinary storm. This is a tidal wave of change. There is no need to fear. This is why we rolled out a comprehensive budget this year to help Singaporeans cope with the uncertainties ahead of you.
All right, so as we heard, some opposition parties were pretty quick to criticize all this, but to first address the fear-mongering allegations. Any truth to these suggestions, you think, by opposition? If you bear in mind the timeline of this year's GE, maybe the PAP even brought elections forward due to tariffs. Nick?
Yeah, I think the elections, based on just anecdata and what we were hearing, could have been a little bit later. Maybe by a week or so, and in the worst case, pushed the later part of this year. And I think the government, the PAP, would definitely want to get the election out of the way. In order to sort of have a clear road ahead to sort of deal with whatever gets thrown in our direction. But I think, in terms of the narrative, in terms of building up this stormy clouds or this trade war that DPM Gan was referencing, I think that plays a little bit into election strategy as well. Of course, the ruling party has quite often alluded to a flight to safety, in times of great turbulence, don't rock the boat. It's an election strategy, and of course it plays out for the opposition to then try to counter that as well. I do think it's interesting in terms of strategy-wise for, say, the Workers' Party, which is now the main and most high-profile opposition party. Their strategy is sort of evolving. They've acknowledged that the world has changed. I think both their leader of the opposition, Pritam Singh, and some of the other new faces have alluded to the fact that we have to accept that the world has changed. So they're not saying it's business as usual. And then they're offering themselves as a balancing factor. So they're saying that, look, we don't, in times of crisis, we play ball, we don't rock the boat. So, don't have to worry about us. But then some of the younger faces are coming in and saying we are voices for change. So I think they are stuck in a place now where they've evolved into a fairly stable presence in Parliament, and their narrative is having to be shifted and adjusted a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're starting to see a little bit of tension in terms of how they want to get their message across.
Yeah, so Nick, we're definitely going to go back to Workers' Party and their stance and all this, but I want to throw this question to you, Ian. Is this just a political strategy, like Nick said, or is it fear-mongering?
It's election time. That's definitely going to be electioneering, okay? So let's take it for what it's worth. So I also do want to point to something that Nick had said about the Workers' Party. I think where they're trying to position themselves is one that is of a loyal opposition. So, it is about stability, but it is, I think, about trying to provide some oversight. I mean, you can make the argument that what we're seeing in the United States today, with the second Trump administration. It's very different from the first one because the first one you had the Democrats in charge of the House, so they could provide some ballast. And that absence now means that the executive branch gets free run. So maybe the Workers' Party is warning about that. And also, I think with some of the other candidates talking about change, it I think speaks to the tension that not just the Workers' Party, but Singapore and perhaps the world is in now. So I agree that we are at a moment of change. The world is in a moment of change. So the question is, do we keep to what we're familiar with, or do we find some way of reinventing ourselves? There's no clear answer. As Nick very clearly pointed out, it's very unpredictable what will happen.
Yeah.
So that's anybody's guess. So that's a certain tension that's playing out not just in any particular party. I think that's a question that all of us have to answer. Is the same old approach good enough? Or do we really need to think of a new business model? And we have to lay it out there. We have to talk about that in honest terms. And I suppose what the Workers' Party is trying to do is say, okay, this is a debate that we need to have as a country. Of course, voters will have to decide whether that is the case. And just back on the point about the PAP, I was actually surprised, honestly, about how late they responded. So the Trump administration, look, when Trump was running for office, he told us what he was going to do. So I was a bit surprised that the task force came in, just a few weeks ago, not in early November last year, in anticipation, right? I was a little bit surprised that as the 90-day clock for negotiation is ticking away, we're taking 4 weeks off, right? There's rid of the solution parliament, rid of election, there's the campaign period, and then if things goes fast, maybe a week to form the new cabinet. We're taking a week out of that 90 days. So I don't know. I'm I'm a bit perplexed by that. I would take these things very seriously, and Lawrence Wong himself, had been talking basically since he got into office about the storm clouds. He made it a big point of his National Day rally. So the reaction time and the approach is a bit surprising. I think also in February 4th in Parliament, Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan talked about how he did not expect direct tariffs to be on Singapore. So all these information points leave me a bit perplexed about how for a small, agile country we are reacting as we are.
Okay, so we actually have a question from a viewer that I would like to extend to the two of you. Ethan C. asks, there's no good time to vote for change, but there's definitely a worst time. Should we be voting safe in this global recession and save the vote for change in the next GE? What do you think?
I think this notion of what is safe is changing as well. I think we've spoken about this in the past couple of days. If you looked at the 2020 election in the time of a global pandemic, complete uncertainty, and yet at the same time the ruling party struggled a little bit. So what is actually safe in this day and age now? A bit to what Ian alluded to, is safe actually trying something new, something different to adapt to a new world and something different, or is something a little bit tried, true, tested, the better option as well. Again, I think it depends on which demographic of voters you speak to. Right? The traditional idea is that the older voters, a bit more conservative, would much rather stick with stuff that they know, and the younger voters would be a little bit more gung-ho and say, let's try something different. The challenge for the opposition has always been that they propose a lot of ideas, they propose a lot of things, but a lot of it is ideation, and it's easy to say, oh, well, none of it has ever been tested and proven. But that will always be the case, inevitably until they become the government, right? So I think voters in Singapore are a little bit stuck in this catch-22 type of scenario. But I think one thing's for sure, as we look ahead to the world with the kind of turbulence that we are expecting here, is something we should take quite seriously. Again, whether it's now time to put in a protest vote or do something just to show or keep the ruling party on its toes because, hey, they're going to win anyway. I'm not entirely sure if now is the right time. I don't know if there ever is a good time for something like that.
All right, Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a better or worse time for change. I think what we do need to think about is the fact that we're operating under a high degree of uncertainty. So we don't know what the best answer is. For people who have a larger risk appetite, they may think, okay, we'll go for change, but that might actually be the better solution because you don't want to be caught on the back foot. The world has moved forward and we're still stuck somewhere. At the same time, you may say people with a lower risk appetite may say, all right, you know what, we'll stick with our try and test it. But they may to end up in they may bet correctly, right? Essentially, we're betting. They may bet correctly, and not to be the first mover may be the smart thing to do. See what's going on first, but because things are happening so fast, because what's happening in the U.S., also the reactions from the PRC, all that is moving very, very quickly. It's not just an opposition or PAP or that kind of a debate now. I think the question before voters now is what is the best way to chart ourselves forward? Maybe it's about having more voices. Maybe it's having less. No one can tell you for sure.
Okay, so I want to bring up the Workers' Party now. To your point, Nick, you mentioned that they're trying to be the balanced voice, this GE. And we know that the Workers' Party made some comments on the whole tariff situation. Jamus Lim, who is contesting in Sengkang GRC, gave some comments on what the WP plans to do in the face of these challenges. So let's hear it.
I think it's important to recognize that, of course, the world tariff situation is constantly evolving. The U.S. administration is quite mercurial. So to that extent, it is, while it's true that we are entering a period of greater policy uncertainty, I don't think it's baked into the cake that we will definitely be going into massively hard times. That remains to be seen. Singapore, as a small player in the global system, it is absolutely imperative that we work within a broader coalition of trade partners and trade blocs. So this includes ASEAN, obviously, in the first instance, but we are, of course, members of many other ones. We're members of, for instance, the CPTPP, and that is another avenue by which we can leverage off and multiply the effects of what we care about as a small trading nation to ensure the resilience of our economy in the face of these issues.
So what do you make of this stance? Do you think that it's a good idea to rely on regional alliances maybe?
Well, I mean, firstly, they're not alliances in the sort of technical sense, right? It's not a security, mutual security arrangement with commitments. But I think as a small state, we have benefited and will probably continue to benefit if there are stronger institutions, clearer laws, more predictability, and also somewhat more restraint to the degree possible on major powers. Because if we're in a world where basically might makes right, then as a smaller entity, we are going to be far more vulnerable. So regional partnerships are, of course, the first rung, but there are others that we should be looking at. So the CPTPP, so countries that are more looking towards more sort of liberalization, looking towards more high-quality kinds of cooperation. That's one outlet. There is look towards RCEP. That's another free trade arrangement. There are various bilateral arrangements that Singapore should look at. I think the other thing not to forget is things like the United Nations and things like the World Trade Organization are important for Singapore. They are somewhat broken now, so we probably should also look at who we can work with to, maintain or perhaps reform some of those elements that are important for us.
Okay, so let's look at the overall situation we've been seeing globally, at least last year in 2024. It was a tough year for incumbent governments around the world. We saw the US, the UK, Germany, sitting governments facing heavy losses. So given all of this political upheaval that we've seen recently, what does it mean for us here in Singapore, bearing in mind that we're seeing all this uncertainty everywhere in the world now? Nick?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of important lessons for Singapore and Singaporeans to take note of. I think when we look at the type of politics that are emerging, the type of politics that got Trump elected for a second term, the rise of right-wing nationalist parties in Europe, and the type of tactics that they deploy, stirring up divisions, getting people emotionally riled up, and sort of getting their way into power through in those means, it raises some interesting lessons for us here in Singapore. I think there are views, of course, that Singapore politics are normalizing in the sense, moving towards a greater desire for pluralism, more different voices in parliament and things like that. And the sort of unique style of government that we had in Singapore for the past, I guess, 60 years now, is something that may not appeal so much to a younger generation of voters. And if you look at what's happening in different countries, then voters ourselves have to ask, is this the sort of thing that we want to see in Singapore? There is a narrative that I've grew up listening to about Singapore's exceptionalism and the fact that we are different, and the only way we succeed is by being different. So if we start to drift towards more normal politics and looking at what you described happening in the world, as taking that as the yardstick for normal politics, it is a very serious question for us to ask ourselves. It's just that, based on what we have been discussing now, the strategy of parties in Singapore, the global uncertainty, local issues, rising cost of living, the type of politicians we want to see, are they just good orators and good speakers? Do they tell great jokes at rallies, and things like that? And then you layer on the greater complexity. I think we have to bear in mind there's quite a lot at stake on this Saturday for sure.
Very quickly, Ian, your thoughts?
So I think to go back to your original point, incumbency had a big disadvantage last year. So it's not just right-wing politics. If you look at Modi and the BJP in India, they're pretty right-wing, but they had a setback. So I think what we see is really people blaming incumbents for high cost of living, blaming incumbents for inflation. It may not be their fault, but because they are in office, they get blamed for it. Whether things change around this year because of the changing dynamics, that has to be seen. That needs to be seen. Yeah.
So Singapore has this reputation, or at least has been seen as a symbol of political stability, right, around the world. But is stability alone enough for the challenges that lie ahead? Do you think there will be greater scrutiny by the international community this time, given the global environment? Nick?
Yeah, I think for sure brand Singapore has been built around this notion of stability, consistency, planning that's done not in 5-year cycles or 4-year cycles or 2-year cycles even. So when policies get rolled into place, companies that are looking at making significant billion-dollar investments are confident that if they put their money here, at least for a couple of decades, this is the direction that we're going to be moving into. So, when we talk, actually when we heard what the Workers' Party's James Lim was talking about just now, the alliances and stuff like that, that's been a consistent policy for Singapore. We're huge ASEANists and we are huge believers in global trade and globalization. So when we see that kind of suggestions of what he's saying, he is sort of hearkening to stable, consistent positions. He's not actually suggesting anything radical or new, which some people might be looking out for, actually. So I think when then, as we were sort of alluding to, the move towards a more normal system of politics, that we might see changes going forward, we lose something. Do we gain something in return? That, as Ian was sort of saying earlier, is definitely an unknown. But for those of us who have grown up in Singapore over the years and understood how the global community looks at us, you can know for sure that a lot of people are watching politics evolve in Singapore with quite a close eye.
Yeah. Well, Ian, what about you?
So I just want to say again that, stability, predictability, that is a good thing for many people, especially those who are thinking long term. But the trade-off there is agility, right? And the ability to change fast. So what you might want to also think of is, okay, if you go for stability, if you're going for, investing and committing something to something that's long term, you could end up in a situation where you're overly committed somewhere and it's hard to shift, right? So stability in that case might become stasis and paralysis, which is also a risk. So my point is just to remind people that we need to think about the different sides of the ledger.
Okay, so before we let you go, I want to bring in another snippet from today's lunchtime rally with PM Wong calling once again for a clear mandate. Let's take a listen.
If the PAP has a weakened mandate, assuming return to power, but with a weakened mandate, you can be sure there will be people tempted to push us around. It will be harder for us to advance Singapore's interests.
Is that even true, gentlemen? Would a slimmer mandate for the PAP really make it harder for Singapore to stand its ground globally, or is this just a domestic rallying call, you think, Ian?
So, in a very technical sense, I think a mandate is a mandate. You either have it or you don't. So, with 97 seats up for grabs, if you have 49 seats, you have the simple majority, you form the government, you have a mandate. You can push through any law that you want. That is practically the same as having 64 seats. Now, if you have 65 seats to 97 seats, that's also the same. You get to change the constitution as you will, right? So I think here is the sort of language that's being maybe muddied a little bit. The point is that I think Lawrence Wong is asking for support. The fact that Singapore is small, we will get pushed around. That's just how it is. Other countries, they are very used to dealing with polities, states that have differences. But, in our case, I think if you have a mandate, you have a mandate. The question is, I think Lawrence Wong probably coming in in his first election would like to see a lot more support. But that's not exactly the same as a mandate.
All right, Nicholas?
I think if you look at countries where you see swings between parties every few years and every election cycle, it creates an entirely new complexion in terms of how different countries approach it. If they know that as an incumbent government, you've got 2 years before midterms and then you've got to start building up to your next election cycle, they'll know where your priorities are. They'll know that you are potentially keeping an eye on the popular vote. They'll know that you have to do certain things to keep yourself in power, if that's even a possibility. So once they have that kind of calculus, it creates different type of levers and different ways of engaging with us that a long-term consistent government like Singapore, which potentially is not, of course, a perfect system, that kind of system isn't open to that kind of vulnerability. So, I fully agree that with Ian's assessment that, of course, the new 4G leader would like a strong mandate to instill confidence and to maybe spell a slightly rosier outlook for the party in the next few years. But I think, for sure, I'll stick my neck out and I'll say that, the PAP will form the government this time, come this time on Saturday or Sunday. But, it's a question of whether the 4G team receives what it deems a strong mandate. And I think we haven't even debated yet what that means. Yeah.
Okay, so this was a good reminder that Singapore's GE2025 resonates beyond its borders. That was Chong Ja Ian, Associate Professor of Political Science at the National University of Singapore, Nicholas Fang, the Director for Security and Global Affairs at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs, and a former NMP. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
All right, and up next it's time to check out what's going viral on the social media front. Here to break it down for us is Joel Lim, host of the Political Prude, coming up very soon.
As Singapore heads to the polls, Money FM 89.3 brings you front row access to GE 2025 with insights from experts and analysis of the issues that matter to you. Stay ahead with Money FM 89.3.
All right, now let's turn to what's going on in the digital front. Your social media update with Joel Lim from the Political Prude podcast. Joel.
Hello, thanks for having me. So the buzz on social media is definitely not slowing down, with all parties and candidates all churning out content on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I think some of them are producing and posting more content than influencers themselves. So it's really a lot. But one thing that I've really...
Stop, actually.
No, but one thing I've really noticed is that, finally the PAP is really leveling up their social media game, not just with posting more, relatable and engaging videos, but really giving us what we want to see, which is a sharper focus on communicating their track record, or as we say online, their report card.
Oh, yes.
So a good example is, not surprisingly, Minister Ong Ye Kung's team at Sembawang GRC, they had this video that was really styled like an Apple keynote video, when Team Cook goes around one by one and they all present the Apple products. Same thing here with Minister Ong's team. They are basically just showing us what they've really done over the last 5 years, and I thought it was just slickly produced video. But one other video that really caught my eye was Mr. Gan Kim Yong's social media videos of late. One of them got got over 220,000 views on Instagram now, and he jumped on the look left, look right trend that's been going around. You know the
Yes,
song.
the singing trend. Yes, I know that Nick is a big fan of that.
Yeah, huge. I love it. More singing, please.
So he did stitch his own response to that video, featuring a twist that was really about looking in every direction for Singaporeans. And I do believe we have a clip here. So let's take a listen to that clip.
I look left, look right, look left, look right.
I look up to grow our economy. I look down to keep our household costs low. I look ahead to prepare for the future. And I look back to make sure no one is left behind. I am Gan Kim Yong.
我左看右看上看下看，原来每个女孩都不简单。
So good, no.
It's really good. I have to say, I've seen this trend going around, and the comments are always like, you need to pay your intern more. You need to give them a raise.
It's true.
Yes.
But yes, like even the comments, they're all really supportive. And they said, one of them here from Desmond Gracias, he says, I didn't know my ex-MP has got such huge humor.
Yeah.
So I think he himself is also noticing, or his team at least is noticing the support that video is getting. So he's doubling down on this series as well. He posted a new video today referencing Game of Thrones with the iconic line, winter is coming. And he used that opportunity to talk about his leadership track record, guiding the country through difficult times like the 2008 financial crisis and, of course, COVID-19. I think especially for him, it's quite a surprise because prior to the election, he has kept quite a relatively low profile on social media.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see him step out online. Another hot button issue that's been making its rounds on social media is it involves an unfortunate incident at a recent rally. So during a speech, SDP candidate Jijin Wong used a Hokkien racial slur when referring to a teammate in Marsiling UTGRC, Arifin Shah.
Yeah.
And social media quickly reacted. They called out the comment as disrespectful and inappropriate. And then at a rally yesterday, Arifin himself addressed the matter directly. He firmly reiterated that the racism should never be tolerated and shared that Wong had actually personally apologized to him as well. And videos of his speech, which is very passionate and firm, are going around on social media. And I do believe we have a clip. So let's take a listen as well.
For us, minorities, the honest truth is that such remarks are not new. And no, it is not casual racism because there's nothing casual about racism. I can accept that there was no malice, but intention is irrelevant when it comes to such matters. I've always said that we need honest, real conversations. This is one of them. I just want to state that there is no room for racism in Singapore.
Yeah, so for the most part, the sentiment online is very supportive of him. And I have a comment here from Elijah Taping, who summarizes the entire situation quite promptly and greatly. He says that this is the level of clarity and the principles we need in Parliament. So he's showing his support to Arifin and the SDP for stepping in to make a statement like that as well.
Yeah, and I also did see that Arifin managed to finish what he wanted to say despite a heckler in the audience as well. And he followed through with a whole SDP supporting him and all of them coming on stage to apologize as a party. I thought that was a very nice touch.
But don't you guys think that it's a little bit of a distraction? I'm sure the SDP would have preferred not having to deal with this.
Of
They
course.
could
yes.
essentially just move ahead with their own campaign. Now this is kind of clogged up all the... I've seen some comments of people saying, wow, this type of party, that kind of thing, which is a distraction that they really didn't need, I feel.
Yeah, it's true.
I thought it was bad for the SDP, but I think it's also important to recognize that in Singapore, we still have to work on issues of racism. And as a society, the more that we face up to these things and address them, the better off we'll be ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, the GE season definitely brings about so many eyeballs and engagement. And I guess in a way, this is a learning opportunity for all of us. There are many people out there, I believe, like Jijin Wong, who don't really see that slur as offensive, right? So I do think that, this is a good reminder for everyone to be, more kind and more empathetic and also be accountable. I think that's a huge learning lesson.
Or
here.
even the heckler who just wanted to move on. Sometimes
Yeah.
we see things and we just don't want to look at them, right? And it's a reminder that maybe we need to sometimes stop and take a moment. and
Absolutely.
address something.
All right, I do like to want to wrap things up here on a lighter note and end this segment with a unintentionally funny video that is going viral online. It's actually from the Straits Times. It is a part of SMTO's speech during the West Coast Jurong West GRC rally. He was taking his cue from the MC at the event, but every time he wanted to begin his speech, he had to realize that she wasn't quite done with the introduction of him, and a lot of viewers took to the comments to express their candid thoughts on the whole situation, basically saying, SMT will be like, when can I start?
Yes. I have to say that as someone who has emceed a fair share of events, this is my fear. I want to get to them as soon as possible. So now I know that the MC is probably making a mental note. I'm not going to do that again, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah. And honestly, his reactions were so relatable. I believe that we've all been stuck in that kind of like awkward, do I go now moment?
Yeah.
So for me, moments like this kind of remind us that even in high-stakes situations like elections, a little awkwardness and humor still can slip through.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also having a long CV, that probably
is true.
But it's great that it's a good reminder, that we're all human. Everybody's human.
You really do be. All right, that's it for today's social media roundup.
All right, thank you so much. That was Joel Lim, host of the Political Prude. Thanks so much for the update.
Absolutely.
And that's a wrap for your GE Tonight this Monday. But the excitement continues. Tomorrow, we're taking a closer look at AI, from how deepfakes are disrupting campaigns to the way AI is shaping voter decisions and even impacting job security. And we'll be joined by Anthony Tung, professor in the Department of Computer Science at NUS. And we'll also be welcoming back Nicholas Fang. So you wouldn't want to miss it. And if you haven't already, stay with us online for the latest. We're on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and I won't forget Facebook. Money FM 89.3. I'm Audrey Seek. From all of us here at the GE Tonight studio, have a great night.
Tune in to GE Tonight at 7 p.m. every night on Money FM 89.3 for all the latest news and developments as Singapore prepares to head to the polls.
Such a happy feeling when I look at you, because you